From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Kamala Harris accepts the Democratic Party's presidential nomination with a speech in Chicago. Did she clear the bar, and did she offer many new details about how she would govern if voters sent her to the Oval Office? Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We're joined today by my colleagues, columnists Bill McGurn and Kim Strassel. It was a packed house at the United Center in Chicago. Reports that authorities outside were turning away reporters and delegates who were waiting in line when the arena hit capacity. And when the main event arrived, Kamala struck me as not an orator like Barack Obama and not a pep-talking coach like Tim Walz, but the crowd inside the arena was plenty enthusiastic. She delivered her lines forcefully, and it was blessedly short, about 37 minutes. Bill, my impression is that Democrats probably walked away from this arena, the arena on Thursday night, feeling like this is a candidate and this is a ticket that can win. And from your perspective as a former speechwriter for George W. Bush, longtime columnist and political observer, what did you make of the vice president's speech?
I thought it was pretty good, not in substance, but in terms of giving the crowd something it wants to hear, introducing herself. Some of it was tired. We've heard it before. It was enthusiastic. She delivered it well. And the crowd, as you mentioned, was receptive. It was raucous. Convention is like an infomercial. So you have all the nominees, closest supporters in one room. They should be able to give a good speech for that. So I'm not surprised. I mean, it went pretty much as planned. They got rid of cranky old Uncle Joe on the first day, let him have a speech at 11:30 p.m., and then he left so the cool kids could get on with it. The Obamas and the Clintons, and everyone did their bit to rally the base and get them all excited. And I think part of it, they talk about joy. Definitely joy there. And I think, but it was joy born of relief. You know, only a month ago, they were looking at going down in defeat with this old stubborn man who was trailing in the polls and refused to go, said it would take an intervention by God. And now they had a new candidate and she's gaining in the polls, and they naturally feel a sense of optimism.
On the point about saying many words and making it difficult to try to figure out, to draw substance from what they mean, let's listen to this clip of Kamala Harris talking about her plans for the economy.
I will bring together labor and workers and small business owners and entrepreneurs and American companies to create jobs, to grow our economy, and to lower the cost of everyday needs like health care and housing and groceries. We will provide access to capital for small business owners and entrepreneurs and founders. And we will end America's housing shortage and protect Social Security and Medicare.
Kim, she says she will bring together labor and workers and small business owners and entrepreneurs and companies to create jobs and grow our economy. And I found myself thinking, oh, why has no one thought of that before? She also said we will create what I call an opportunity economy, which is an interesting phrase that, as far as I can tell, I have no idea what that is supposed to mean in terms of policy substance. And meanwhile, the hints that we're getting about her from her campaign are in keeping with the agenda by President Biden in particular, and maybe in some places going further. This week, there was a confirmation to the New York Times that the vice president supports many elements of Joe Biden's budget, including nearly $5 trillion in tax increases over a decade. That includes raising the top marginal rate on income. It includes some kind of Medicare surtaxes, and then includes an idea to tax the unrealized capital gains of people with more than $100 million in wealth. And Kim, what that means is basically it would be a wealth tax, whether they earned that income or not. If the value of those stock portfolios or those real estate portfolios went up, they would, I guess, owe taxes on that to Uncle Sam. And it's fascinating that she is presenting herself in these very vague terms, and it's only in anonymous confirmations to reporters from her campaign that we get any sense of what that is supposed to mean in reality.
So, Kyle, I have no doubt that the Kamala campaign would be absolutely thrilled to have you say, I have no idea what any of that means, because that's their campaign strategy, to make sure that nobody has any idea about what she is actually going to do. She went up there on stage. It was very muscular. It was strongly delivered, and it was absolutely vapid. It contained nothing with any concrete details on anything. It was lots of happy talk and phrases like what you just played. I went back and read her speech 3 times, and in terms of specific policy things she mentioned, at least domestically, it came down essentially this: I'm going to provide a middle-class tax cut. No idea how big or who that goes to, how that works. I'm going to protect your abortion rights, your reproductive freedom rights. Okay, that's a longstanding Democratic policy. We're going to do something about gun violence. I don't know what that was supposed to be. And we really care about climate and clean air. Okay, but with, again, no details. Does she continue Biden's EV mandate? Does she indeed crack down further on fracking? Or is she an all of the above energy person? She doesn't get into any of that. And then to your point, these very happy phrases, I'm going to bring together labor and entrepreneurs and small business owners. What must small business owners think about a Kamala Harris embrace of a budget that's going to raise their pass-through tax rate to 39.6%? I mean, how many entrepreneurs really want to go out there and make a go of it with Lena Khan's FTC going after everybody right and left with lawsuits and new rules, or, this minimum tax? She really thinks she can create capital with all of this. It's absurd on its face, but this is the plan. She has a problem. She can't outright embrace the Biden policy and talk about it a lot the last few years because that's what's made everybody feel bad. She doesn't want to alarm anyone by diverging from him with progressive policies, so she's distancing herself from everything she ever believed in the past. So she just can't talk about anything really other than these fuzzy concepts.
Hang tight. We'll be right back in a moment. Welcome back. On foreign policy, I would make a similar critique. I think she was somewhat better on that, in my view, because she was at least saying things about how the United States stands for freedom against tyranny and needs to have the strongest military in the world. Here's the line: I will ensure that America always has the strongest, most lethal fighting force in the world. And I think that's a good goal, though it would be a break from the Biden administration's policy of real inflation-adjusted budget cuts for the military over these past 4 years. Let's listen to her on Israel.
President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. And let me be clear, I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7.
Bill, what did you make of Kamala Harris's statements on foreign policy, which is an area where a president of the United States has very broad discretion, and an area where we have not seen much of what Kamala Harris really believes, as she has been the VP under Joe Biden?
I think it's very similar to the dynamic that Kim laid out in domestic affairs. Look, she can't celebrate weakness, and she can't come right out and support Hamas. So, when I was listening to those words last night on the Middle East and Israel, I thought, gee, I've heard these before. Oh, yes, it was Joe Biden right after October 7th when he gave a great speech, went to Jerusalem to signify his backing, but he's backed away. And I think this is the problem with Kamala Harris. We don't know any substance. They can say anything they want. They're for a strong military. Has she ever backed a weapons development program? Is there any sign of that? Maybe she is. Maybe her administration will be very different. If so, it would be very different from her past in the last 3.5 years. And I think Kim's points about domestic arena and what I'm saying in the foreign arena, it all contributes to a larger theme. The lack of message is the message. They want you to be able to read whatever you want Kamala Harris to be. That's what she's promising you. And normally a presidential candidate could never get away with this for long. The difference today is no one in the press seems inclined to press her on it. And when I say press her, I mean the lack of a press conference for a month. So instead we get this infomercial. Lack of a press conference for a month or taking a single hard interview is so different. If this were a Republican president, when I worked for George Bush, there'd be every day there'd be a drumbeat on Kamala Harris not taking questions. There'd be charged, day 34 of this. And it'd be repeated by everyone in the press around her. That simply doesn't happen. The occasional protest goes up or someone will say, well, sooner or later she has to give a press conference. I'm really not so sure anymore.
Kim, what's your take on the commander-in-chief test that many voters might be thinking about now? And one more piece of fodder I would throw out here is the word China appears a single time in this transcription of the Kamala Harris speech that I'm looking at. It's this line: she will make sure that America, not China, wins the competition for the 21st century, and that we strengthen, not abdicate, our global leadership, which is fine as far as it goes. But again, what does that mean in terms of trade or tariffs or defending or not Taiwan?
Right. There's the specific question of how she guarantees that we maintain that dominance in those two very specific policy areas. But that's also a very tiny portion of the Chinese threat. There's a regional question about China and not just how we counteract any threats, for instance, to Taiwan and other of our allies in that region, but also how we go out and we counter the influence that they are building with Russia and Iran, also Saudi Arabia and Middle Eastern countries. Those, like Saudi Arabia, have long been our allies, but we've ceded some of that on the Biden administration. What's her view on all this? I think this is immensely important because we've talked a lot on this podcast and in our editorials, the press, about the vagueness of her domestic policy agenda. But it's the foreign policy that is most scary because we've heard the least from her on that. We have no idea from the past few years as well what she really thinks on this. To the extent that she has given some hints prior to this nomination, she actually came out and sounded far more aggressive against Israel than Biden had in terms of her policy. This is a blank slate. And the reason this matters is that more so than any other area, foreign policy is one in which we have to understand a person's instincts and abilities because they often are making decisions with guidance from folks, but they are the decider. This is not legislation that goes through Congress. These are decisions that have to be made at 3 a.m. And we have very little sense of her competence in that area or her views and her agenda in that area.
Let's broaden this conversation out a little bit. Bill, this is your first appearance on the podcast since we have seen these speeches from not only Joe Biden, who you mentioned earlier, but Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Tim Walz. Any other reflections on this broader political pageant that the Democrats have put on? I'll give you a chance, Bill, to get your licks in now.
Well, I think they looked at the Republican convention. They saw the unity. They wanted that to be the same message. There's a threat from the anti-Israel protesters, but not enough of them turned up to make a difference, really, and the police handled them well. So I think they handled it. I think all conventions are infomercials, and they're only ruined by outsiders or someone really does a belly flop. It's not hard to control it. You control the podium. The people are the most enthusiastic people for your candidate. So that's not hard. The question is now, does this same lack of a message, is that going to be the defining feature of her campaign going through November? I would have said before it won't because it can't. And just nowadays, I'm not so sure. I don't think the press is inclined to hold her to anything. For example, fact checking. If that speech last night were fact-checked, Snopes would be busy for 2 days. Every utterance of Donald Trump is fact-checked. This isn't. And again, I don't really think that's such a big deal. That's what conventions give you. But it's notable she just is able to get this far. All the previous things we thought liabilities, that she's largely unknown for any achievements. She's not going out there with the press. She's not giving interviews. There now seem to be virtues with such little time left. Maybe she can run out the clock.